contract with Universal. That's why Hooper's got the credit, the official directing credit on the film, and it was a big springboard for Hooper because it's like an A-list movie for a major studio,
mainstream.
Yeah, because I don't think he had done anything mainstream. I mean, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is like a real low-budget independent film. I don't know what he had done in between those two, The Funhouse, but I've never seen The Funhouse, so I don't know if that was a major studio film. It sounds like Poltergeist was his first major film. And I think have you seen his follow-up, Life Force?
No.
I'm trying to remember what studio that's for. I want to say it's MGM, but I could be wrong. He kind of does like kind of a sci-fi succubus film afterwards, which is it's a very weird movie. But that was another major film for him called Life Force. Check it out. It's not great, and I know if you've ever listened to the podcast, like How Did This Get Made, that was like one of their episodes where they talked about like just how fucking ridiculous it is. But that was his follow-up. That was supposed to be another major film. I want to say it was from MGM, but I could be wrong. But who's the actual director? I have to be honest and say it really feels like Spielberg. Just with what goes on in the film and then all the reports like behind the scenes and the fact that he's the one that kind of took over all the post-production stuff. Even at that point in time, he's already working on E.T. If this wrapped in August of 1981, the actual filming, but E.T. is shot between September and December of 1981, so he's actively working on Poltergeist, the post-production, while he's shooting E.T. So, what are your thoughts on that controversy? I know we spent a lot of time on it, but what are your thoughts? What do you think?
Honestly, it's really hard to. I feel like we may never know like the exact.
Someone just yelled outside.
Truth about this controversy, but I don't. For me, I feel like they kind of co-directed it together, which is and I feel like the league legally.
They couldn't split the credit between the two guys.
Yeah, but I think it very much was like a dual kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like the Wachowskis are in the vein of that. But
do you know that the Directors Guild does not like multiple directors?
No, they're against it.
They really don't like it. They make exceptions, like if it's the Coen brothers or the Wachowskis or something. But when it's two different people. Or
not related.
Not related. They do not like it. It's very rare that you'll see a directing credit from two people.
Well, don't they? Didn't they have issues with like Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez because they do so much?
On Sin City, they had issues with Frank Miller being a co-director, and I think. If I'm not mistaken, Rodriguez left the Directors Guild over that controversy because he wanted Frank Miller to have that co-directing credit with him. And then a section of the movie is directed by Quentin Tarantino. Even that's the same movie. If it's an anthology movie, like the Twilight Zone film or something, that's different because each person is directing their own little section. But when it's a single film, they don't like multiple directors on it. So, yeah, legally the Universal contract kind of forbade that from happening, but I wonder if that was also like a Directors Guild call as well, saying that they couldn't have two directors on the film. So that's why Hooper gets the credit. But I would be satisfied if it was a co-director.
Yeah.
If Spielberg had a co-directing credit on it. But it very much has his stamp. And especially considering the film that comes out a week after this movie, his official film that summer, which is E.T., because they open up within a week of each other. But if you watch them back to back, they're extremely similar.
Yeah. Like, they have the kind of whimsical sensibility about them. But of course, as you said before, Poltergeist is definitely veers off into darker territory.
Much darker territory, yeah. So, what's the other big story on this film?
The random cast deaths that happened between 1 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of brought up this issue of whether or not, like, the property, and when I say property, I mean just like the franchise, this film franchise has some kind of curse, specifically because they used, I know for the first and second film, they used real cadavers.
The skeletons in the pool,
yes,
and in the climax of Poltergeist are rumored to be real.
Yes, because it was cheaper than actually getting props, which is insane.
Yeah, it's cheaper to get a live, or I shouldn't say live, a real skeleton as opposed to fabricating one for a prop.
So insane.
I know that that was covered in the Cursed Films episode on this movie that was out, I don't know, last year. We mentioned the Cursed Films episode.
Yes.
I know that there's an episode of the E! True Hollywood Story from however many years ago that really got into it. But it's kind of this lore, this urban Hollywood lore, I should say, that the film, or at least the franchise, is cursed. But beyond the deaths of some of the cast members, like, what really makes it cursed? There wasn't anything like super weird happening on set. Not something like The Exorcist or even The Omen, which we mentioned earlier, where there's like really odd stuff going on during production.
Yeah, like the fires and all kinds of crazy, unexplainable stuff. But yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned that. Yeah, beyond the deaths.
And not to cut you off, but two of the deaths, like, truly are tragic.
Mm-hmm.
Are tragic, sad deaths.
And before their time.
Much before their time, you know, and that's Heather O'Rourke, who was only 12 when she died.
1988, I think.
Yeah, like early 88. I have notes on that stuff, but I didn't want to cut you off, so.
No, go ahead.
So the two super tragic deaths are Heather O'Rourke, who died in 1988. She was only 12.
I believe.
At the time when she died. And she died of, intestinal stenosis.
She had like a blockage,
yeah,
right?
like a blockage, a bowel blockage, and I think that caused her to have a cardiac arrest. She was misdiagnosed as having Crohn's disease, and I don't know if she had been diagnosed properly, if that would have changed the outcome.
I think so. Yeah, she probably would be here.
She passed away. They were filming, I think, the third Poltergeist film.
Before they finished, she passed away, right?
Yeah, they had finished filming, but then they needed to do reshoots. Yeah, that was another thing that there were kind of multiple disputed stories about as to the reshoot, as to whether or not it actually needed to be reshot. Mm-hmm. The director kind of said no, and then was contradicted by, I think, like behind-the-scenes footage or something, showing them reshooting the stuff. I think they held off on the reshoot because she was sick. She was really sick at the time, and they were kind of holding off, hoping she would get better, and then when she passed away, I think the studio, I think MGM kind of forced them to reshoot the ending and said, you know, if you don't, we're going to replace you with another director. So her death is tragic because she was so young, and then the other one is Dominique Dunne, who just after Poltergeist had opened in June of 1982, I think in, October, at the end of October of 1982, she's killed by an ex-boyfriend. She's strangled by her ex-boyfriend and never regains consciousness, goes into a coma, and 4 or 5 days later she passes away. Unfortunately, she's only 22 at the time. She's pretty young when that happens. Those two undeniably, like, tragic. You know, they're so young before their time. I don't think that either of them had done anything else besides Poltergeist. I think Dominic Dunn definitely only was in Poltergeist, and Heather O'Rourke, as to my knowledge, only did the 3 Poltergeist films. But then there's a couple others that die that are in the sequel. But as tragic as someone losing their life is, like, they were sick. Like, they were older people. Had, you know, the main villain in the second one. Have you seen the second one?
Yes, I had it as a kid.
It's not good.
You don't like it?
I don't like it.
The Other Side, it's called, right?
Yeah, The Other Side. I think they're all streaming on HBO right now. I think you mentioned AMC, but I think they're all on HBO as well.
I know the first one for sure is on AMC, but I haven't seen if they're on Max, but I'm sure you're right.
Yeah. The second and the third one, they're not good. But the second one, the main villain in the second one is an older guy who I think looks pretty thin and unhealthy in the film. Was actually dying of stomach cancer, had terminal stomach cancer at the time.
But he had been diagnosed prior to taking the role.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But I think he dies during production, or like just after they finished, because I know that there's some ADR looping where it's someone else providing the voice. And then the other guy, the guy that plays the shaman, I think died. Will Sampson. He's the chief in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh, okay.
I think he had a kidney transplant or something.
Oh yeah, kidney failure.
And he had kidney failure. So those, as tragic as they are, like, they're just unfortunate, you know, people getting sick. It's really the 2 young actresses dying so young and in such tragic ways that I think where the curse stems from. But everyone else in the cast is fine. Craig T. Nelson, Joe Beth Williams still working. So it's debatable as to whether that's an actual curse or just a couple of pretty tragic coincidences that happen.
Well, I mean, it's obvious that it's easy to say this film is cursed because of the subject matter that it's playing with, you know what I mean? And as you get deeper into the movie, things get more and more kind of vicious, and they're, you know, and then with the reveal at the end, which you said you didn't want to you didn't want to necessarily blow, but
we can blow it on the show. I just didn't want to blow it so early with what I asked you
with an intro,
to play with the intro or a possible intro.
But you know, it talks about basically somebody, you know, creating like this neighborhood over a cemetery, you know, without basically desecrating bodies.
Yeah, and that's something that you don't know what's going on, and you don't find that out until probably the start of the second act, or the end of the second act. Excuse me, the end of the second act, or possibly even the start of the third. You don't find out exactly what's going on until the climax. But yes, there's a conversation between Craig T. Nelson's character Steve and his boss. And his boss is kind of offering him, because Steve is a real estate guy, he's kind of offering him the chance to have a brand new house on the hill overlooking the previous neighborhoods that have been built, the neighborhood where Steve lives. Mm-hmm. And it's on a hill with a cemetery. And he makes a joke like, oh, you know, there's not much room for a pool here because of the cemetery. And then you find out from the boss that, oh, well, we can move the bodies, we can relocate the cemetery. We've done it before. In fact, we've done it right down in your neighborhood. And there's some weird stuff happening, but like it doesn't go to shit until they start digging in the backyard to make the pool. Then that's when things get a little bit darker. That's when Carol Ann is kidnapped by the evil entities, the ghosts. And that's kind of what starts it off.